Poor nun marries a 70-year-old millionaire. 3 days later, she discovers his secret. From her wheelchair, Lucia Rosario watched tears streaming unchecked down her hollow cheeks. The mother's gaze never left her daughter. Have you ever wondered what impossible choices you might make for those you love? What secrets might lie dormant in your own family tree, waiting to emerge? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The courthouse was silent except for the shuffling of papers and the uneven breathing of the elderly man. A young woman in a modest turquoise dress stood beside him, her eyes downcast as the judge recited the marriage vows. At 20 years old, Maria Rosario's slender fingers trembled as she accepted the platinum band from Walter Kingston's weathered hand. His 70 years showed in every line of his face, in the slight quiver of his arm as he completed the gesture. From her wheelchair, Lucia Rosario watched tears streaming unchecked down her hollow cheeks. The mother's gaze never left her daughter, a girl who just days ago had worn the simple habit of a novice nun, now signing her birth name on a marriage certificate linking her to one of the city's wealthiest men. 3 days after the solemn exchange, Maria found Walter collapsed on the oriental rug of his private study. His frail body curled beside an open safe containing leather-bound journals. The topmost volume lay open, revealing handwritten confessions that shattered everything she believed about herself. She wasn't just Walter Kingston's young bride. She was his granddaughter. And the handsome, blue-eyed man fighting to invalidate their marriage? Her biological brother. Have you ever wondered what impossible choices you might make for those you love? What secrets might lie dormant in your own family tree, waiting to emerge? Join us as we uncover how a dying millionaire's last wish reunites two siblings separated by decades of deception and denial. Before Walter Kingston drew his final breath, he orchestrated a plan 20 years in the making, one that would either heal his fractured family or destroy any chance of reconciliation forever. The chapel bells of Sisters of Mercy convent rang for evening prayers as Sister Maria Rosario's phone vibrated against her hip. No calls came during prayer hours unless emergencies warranted interruption. Her heart fluttered as she slipped into the stone corridor, pressing the device to her ear. Your mother's condition has deteriorated significantly. Dr. Patel's voice carried no comfort. You should come immediately. Within an hour, Maria's sensible black shoes crossed the threshold of the apartment she'd left 3 years earlier. The space felt smaller now, walls closing in as she discovered the stack of notices on the kitchen table. Foreclosure warnings, medical bills, insurance denials. Final notices highlighted in aggressive yellow. They're stopping my treatments next week, Lucia explained from her bed, thin fingers clutching a rosary. Without the experimental protocol, there's nothing more they can do. Maria sat beside her mother, scanning documents that blurred through her tears. They need $50,000 within 14 days. Impossible on her mother's disability payments and Maria's non-existent income. I've taken vows, Mama, Maria whispered, fingering the simple wooden cross at her neck. I promise my life to God's service. God understands family obligations, Lucia replied, her once vibrant voice now paper-thin. The Kingston estate is seeking a temporary nurse's aide. The pay is good, maybe enough to negotiate with the bank. Maria's stomach tightened. Kingston? As in Walter Kingston. Lucia turned away, something unreadable crossing her face. Yes, the old banker. That night, Maria knelt beside her childhood bed, torn between competing commitments. By dawn, she'd composed a letter requesting temporary leave from her religious duties, citing family emergency. Mother Superior's response came swiftly, compassionate but clear. Such an extended absence would require reevaluation of her novitiate status upon return. As Maria dressed in civilian clothes for the first time in years, the turquoise dress her mother had sewn for her high school graduation now hanging loosely on her frame, she caught herself in the mirror. Without her habit, she looked younger, vulnerable. Yet underneath her uncertainty burned fierce determination. The taxi dropped her at imposing wrought iron gates that parted automatically upon her arrival. Beyond stretched Kingston Manor, its limestone facade gleaming in morning light, windows reflecting the sky like countless watching eyes. Maria clutched her small handbag containing her nursing certification and references, wondering why her mother had tensed at the mention of this place. As the massive oak door swung open, Maria couldn't shake the feeling she was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. Nicholas Kingston surveyed downtown from his penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled beneath him like a circuit board of lights and movement. At 23, he'd already replicated his grandfather's legendary investment instincts, turning millions into more millions with calculated precision. The Wall Street Journal had dubbed him the Prince of Kingston Holdings last quarter, a title that made him smirk whenever he recalled Walter's reaction. "You've barely begun," the old man had said during their last conversation months ago. "Success isn't measured in quarterly returns." Nicholas straightened his midnight blue tie, a perfect match to his tailored suit. The empty penthouse echoed with his footsteps. 4,000 square feet of architectural perfection containing Italian furniture he rarely sat on, an untouched gourmet kitchen, and walls adorned with expensive art he'd purchased on advice but never truly examined. His phone chimed with his assistant's distinctive tone. "Mr. Kingston, Mr. Hargrove insists on speaking with you immediately." Elliot Hargrove had served as Kingston family attorney for 30 years. He never called without purpose. "Nicholas." Hargrove's voice carried none of its usual measured calm. "I need you in my office tomorrow morning. Your grandfather has been making unusual financial movements." "Is he finally selling the estate?" Nicholas asked, pouring himself 3 fingers of bourbon. "No, but someone is accessing family accounts regularly. Medical payments, property assessments. There's more, but I can't discuss it over the phone." Nicholas frowned. "Why not just tell me what's happening?" "Your grandfather's instructions prohibit disclosure except in person." "Classic Walter," Nicholas muttered, "always with the games." After ending the call, Nicholas studied a framed photograph, the only personal item in the sterile space. A younger Walter stood beside Nicholas's father Thomas, both in matching suits before the Kingston building downtown. The photo predated Nicholas's birth, capturing a moment when father and son stood united before the family empire. Thomas had died when Nicholas was 8, leaving him to Walter's distant guardianship and his mother's cold ambition. The old man had taught him everything about finance, but nothing about family, maintaining professional distance even as he groomed Nicholas to continue the Kingston legacy. Nicholas hadn't visited the family estate in months. Walter's health had been declining for years, another subject discussed only through intermediaries and medical reports. Whatever prompted Hargrove's unusual request must be significant. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, watching raindrops race down the pane. Beyond his reflection, lightning illuminated dark clouds gathering over the city. Something in Hargrove's tone suggested more than routine legal matters. "Enough secrets, old man," Nicholas whispered. Tomorrow, he would demand answers from Hargrove, from the mysterious transactions, and from Walter himself, if necessary. Maria dusted the library shelves methodically, pausing at a silver-framed photograph she'd noticed during her first days at Kingston Manor. A younger Walter stood with another man, presumably his son Thomas, according to Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper who'd oriented Maria to the sprawling estate. The resemblance between them was striking, particularly around the eyes, the same piercing blue that occasionally appeared in Maria's own reflection. "You favor him somewhat." Walter's voice startled her from the doorway. Despite his frailty, he moved with surprising stealth when not using his wheelchair. "I am sorry." Maria nearly dropped the frame. "Your eyes. The shape reminds me of my late son." Walter entered slowly, leaning heavily on his cane. "You mentioned your father passed away before your birth?" Maria nodded, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. "My mother rarely speaks of him. An accident," she said. "Tragic. And you chose religious life young. Unusual for someone with your..." He gestured vaguely, natural advantages. Maria returned the photograph to its place. Faith offered structure when little else did. Mother's illness, our financial struggles, the sisters provided stability. Walter watched her with an intensity that made Maria's skin prickle. Since her arrival 3 days ago, he questioned her extensively about her childhood, her mother, her education. His interest seemed excessive for an employer, yet Mrs. Henderson assured her this was normal. He values knowing who works in his home, she'd explained. Across town, Nicholas strode through the marble lobby of Hargrove and Associates, bypassing the receptionist with a curt nod. Elliot Hargrove waited in his corner office, surrounded by stacks of folders bearing the Kingston family crest. "You're investigating someone," Nicholas observed, noting the distinctive pattern of Hargrove's research: medical records, background checks, financial histories. "Your grandfather has been searching for someone specific," Hargrove confirmed, selecting a folder. "Someone connected to your father. Another mistress claiming paternity?" Nicholas asked dryly. "Nothing so straightforward. Walter has accessed your father's private accounts. One's established after your birth." Nicholas frowned. "What accounts?" "Regular payments to a woman named Lucia Rosario for 16 years, terminated after your father's death. Walter resumed them 3 months ago, along with substantial medical payments to Boston Memorial." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "And you're only telling me now because Walter specifically restricted this information. I'm violating confidentiality because the situation has escalated." Back at Kingston Manor, Maria organized Walter's medications for the evening, noting the increased dosages of pain management prescriptions. His cancer was advancing faster than he acknowledged to the household staff. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother's doctor. Lucia's latest tests showed continued deterioration. The experimental treatment remained their only hope, but without immediate financial intervention. Maria's hand trembled, sending pills scattering across the medication tray. The sound drew Walter from his study. "Is everything all right?" he asked, observing her distress. The compassion in his voice broke something in Maria. 3 days of maintaining professional distance crumbled as tears spilled onto her cheeks. "It's my mother. Her condition is worsening, and we're running out of time." Walter's expression changed, determination replacing concern. "Perhaps we should discuss this further in my study." As Maria followed him down the hallway, Hargrove handed Nicholas a final document across town. "Your grandfather updated his will last week. Let me guess, charitable donations?" Nicholas asked sarcastically. "No." Hargrove's expression remained grave. "He's planning something significant. I recommend you visit him immediately." Walter Kingston settled into his leather chair, gesturing for Maria to sit opposite his massive oak desk. Family portraits lined the wall behind him, generations of Kingston patriarchs observing their conversation with painted eyes. "Your mother's condition," Walter began, folding his hands. "Metastatic cancer requiring experimental immunotherapy treatments. Insurance denial due to unproven protocols. Treatment cost, approximately $50,000 for the initial phase." Maria stiffened. "How do you know those details?" "I make it my business to understand my employees' circumstances." Walter opened a drawer, removing a file with Lucia's name. "Your mother worked as a housekeeper while putting herself through nursing school. You attended St. Catherine's on scholarship before entering the convent at 17. Your father's identity remains officially undocumented. Why investigate us?" Maria's voice trembled between confusion and outrage. "I have a proposition that would solve your financial difficulties immediately." Walter pushed himself to standing, moving to the window overlooking manicured gardens. "Marriage." The word hung between them, absurd and impossible. "Excuse me." Maria nearly laughed despite her shock. "A civil ceremony. No romantic expectations." Walter turned, his expression businesslike. "In exchange, I would provide complete financial security for both you and your mother. Immediate access to funds for her treatments, elimination of your debts, and eventual inheritance of substantial assets." You can't be serious." Maria stood, preparing to leave. I took religious vows. Temporary vows that could be suspended for family obligations. Walter's calm certainty suggested he'd researched this aspect too. You've already requested extended leave. Why would you propose something so unconventional? Maria demanded. Walter returned to his desk, lowering himself carefully. I have terminal cancer, a diagnosis I've shared with no one else. 3 months at most, according to specialists. My fortune will otherwise go to distant relatives who haven't bothered visiting in decades. He touched a photograph of his son. I prefer my resources to help someone deserving, someone with compassion and integrity. I've observed both in you. Across the city, Nicholas paced Hargrove's office, piecing together fragments of information. Walter's been sending investigators to Boston for months. Medical records, housing inquiries, educational backgrounds. He's built a complete profile on this woman and her daughter. The daughter recently began working at Kingston Manor, Hargrove confirmed. Nicholas froze. He hired her? What position? Nurses said. She has appropriate credentials. And remarkable timing, Nicholas growled. What's her name? Maria Rosario, 20 years old. Until recently, a novice at Sisters of Mercy Convent. Nicholas's laugh held no humor. NUN? Vita hilat NUN? What game is he playing? I don't know. Hargrove handed him an envelope, but yesterday he requested these documents to be prepared urgently. Nicholas tore open the envelope, scanning legal language until reaching words that stopped his breath. Marriage license application. At Kingston Manor, Maria fled to her modest room, Walter's proposition echoing in her mind. Marriage to a dying millionaire 50 years her senior. The very suggestion violated everything she believed about sacred unions. Yet as she knelt beside her bed, familiar prayers offered no clarity. Her phone displayed a text from the hospital. Her mother had been moved to intensive care. Without immediate intervention, they would transition to palliative measures only. Maria pressed her palms against her eyes. What choice did she have? Return to the convent, maintain her spiritual purity while her mother suffered, or make a temporary compromise, a business arrangement with a dying man that would save her mother's life? Dawn found Maria at Walter's study door. I have conditions, she stated without preamble. A separate residence within the estate. No physical expectations. An immediate transfer of funds for my mother's treatment. Walter nodded once. I'll have the paperwork ready by noon. The courthouse ceremony 3 days later lasted less than 15 minutes. Maria wore her turquoise dress, Walter a charcoal suit that hung loosely on his diminished frame. Lucia watched from her wheelchair, brought directly from the hospital by private ambulance, her expression unreadable as her daughter became Mrs. Kingston. No one noticed the photographer documenting the ceremony from across the street, nor the immediate transmission of images to Nicholas Kingston's private phone with a simple message. Your grandfather got married today. Meet his bride. Maria moved through Kingston Manor like a ghost, dwelling in the East Wing far from Walter's master suite. The arrangement maintained appearances while preserving her dignity, a marriage existing only on paper. Her mother had been transferred to a private room at Boston Memorial, receiving the experimental treatment that had been denied just days earlier. A simple signature had transformed impossibility into reality. Each morning, Maria brought Walter's medications on a silver tray, reviewed his correspondence, and supervised the rotating medical staff who monitored his declining health. The old man treated her with courteous respect, never referencing their unusual arrangement except when necessary for legal matters. On the third morning of their marriage, Maria discovered Walter in his study reviewing charitable foundations. Despite his terminal diagnosis, he continued allocating millions to medical research, children's programs, and educational initiatives. His generosity contradicted his reputation as a reclusive miser. These are the organizations I've supported for decades, Walter explained, handing her a leather portfolio. You might consider continuing their funding after I'm gone. After you're gone? Maria accepted the folder hesitantly. I assumed your grandson would inherit your philanthropic interests. Walter's expression hardened. Nicholas values different things. I've made provisions for him, of course, but certain matters require. He paused, searching for words, a compassionate perspective. That afternoon, while Walter napped, Maria explored the family wing containing generations of Kingston history. Photographs chronicled Walter's evolution from ambitious young banker to silver-haired patriarch. His son Thomas appeared throughout, athletic, handsome, with distinctive blue eyes that seemed familiar beyond explanation. Maria paused before a particular image. Thomas Kingston with his arm around a striking blonde woman holding an infant. The baby's tiny hand clutched Thomas's finger, creating a perfect circle of connection. The family Walter had mentioned, but rarely discussed. A crash from Walter's study interrupted her observations. Maria rushed down the corridor, finding Walter collapsed beside his desk, an open safe revealed behind a displaced painting. Documents lay scattered across the Persian rug, along with a leather-bound journal open to a page covered in precise handwriting. Walter, Maria knelt beside him, checking vitals with practiced efficiency. His pulse fluttered weakly beneath her fingertips. I'm calling an ambulance. At Boston Memorial, doctors confirmed the worst. The cancer has metastasized more aggressively than anticipated, Dr. Reynolds explained in hushed tones outside Walter's room. Days, possibly hours. We've made him comfortable, but you should prepare yourself, Mrs. Kingston. Mrs. Kingston. The title still felt foreign, a costume Maria had donned temporarily. She sank into a chair outside Walter's room, overwhelmed by the suddenness of it all. 3 days a bride, soon to be a widow. Tailored midnight blue suit argued with hospital staff, his voice carrying down the corridor. I don't care about visiting hours. Walter Kingston is my grandfather, and I demand to know who authorized his admission and who exactly is this woman claiming to be his wife. Maria recognized Nicholas Kingston immediately from photographs, tall and athletic like his father, with the same piercing blue eyes currently flashing with anger. When those eyes locked onto hers, recognition sparked before confusion clouded his features. Something about her face gave him pause. You? Nicholas advanced toward her, voice lowered but intensity magnified. You're the nurse's aide who magically became my grandfather's wife 3 days ago. What kind of scheme are you running? Maria stood her ground despite her trembling hands. Your grandfather is dying. This isn't the place for accusations. It's exactly the place. Nicholas towered over her. A 20-year-old former NUN suddenly marries a terminally ill millionaire? The courts will overturn this marriage before his funeral. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. What I don't know is how you manipulated an old man into this farce. But trust me, whatever you're expecting to gain will never materialize. Maria's composure fractured under his assault. Tears blurred her vision as she fled down the corridor, Nicholas's accusations echoing in her wake. She hailed a taxi to Kingston Manor, determined to collect her few belongings before Nicholas returned to evict her. The manor stood silent as she entered, household staff dismissed for the evening. Maria climbed the grand staircase one last time, passing the study where Walter had collapsed. The safe remained open, its contents scattered across the floor. Maria knelt to gather the fallen papers, freezing when she recognized her mother's name on a decades-old document. Medical records, birth certificates, DNA results, and Walter's journal, open to an entry addressed to Nicholas and Maria, my grandchildren. The journal trembled in Maria's hands as Walter's elegant script revealed truths concealed for decades. 23 years earlier, Thomas Kingston, Walter's only son and Nicholas's father, had fallen deeply in love with a young immigrant nurse named Lucia Rosario. Their affair continued for months while Thomas remained married to Catherine, Nicholas's mother. When Lucia discovered her pregnancy, Thomas faced an impossible choice. Catherine threatened to disappear with 3-year-old Nicholas, ensuring Thomas would never see his son again if he acknowledged his unborn child with Lucia. Torn between his children, Thomas chose to financially support Lucia in secret while remaining with his son and wife. Walter had discovered Thomas's arrangement only after his son's fatal car accident 15 years ago. Further investigation revealed Catherine had intercepted all communication between Thomas and Lucia, preventing any relationship between them. The regular support payments had stopped with Thomas's death, leaving Lucia and young Maria to struggle alone. Walter's most shocking revelation came in his final entry. After years searching for his unknown granddaughter, he had confirmed Maria's identity through discreet DNA comparison. The job offer, their meeting, his marriage proposal, all calculated steps in his plan to reunite his fragmented family and ensure both grandchildren receive their rightful inheritance. The manor's massive front door slammed downstairs, interrupting Maria's reading. Heavy footsteps approached the study, each impact like a hammer driving nails into her composure. Nicholas appeared in the doorway, his expression transitioning from fury to confusion at finding Maria surrounded by scattered documents. "You have some nerve returning here." His voice contained ice but lacked its earlier certainty. Maria silently extended the journal, open to the page addressed to them both. Nicholas hesitated before accepting it, suspicion evident in his rigid posture. Minutes passed in tense silence as Nicholas read, his expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and stunned recognition. He sank into Walter's desk chair, the journal hanging limp from his fingers. "This can't be real." Nicholas stared at Maria with new awareness. "My father wouldn't." "Look at the medical records," Maria said quietly, indicating the DNA results. Walter confirmed it before approaching me. Nicholas studied the genetic analysis, then raised his gaze to Maria's face. For the first time, he truly saw her. The shape of her eyes identical to his own, the same slight curve at the corner of her mouth that he recognized from every mirror. "My mother said my father was devoted to us," Nicholas whispered. "His business trips, his late nights, all for our security. While my mother told me my father died before my birth." Maria's voice carried no accusation, only shared bewilderment. Neither of us received the complete truth. Nicholas stood abruptly, pacing the study. "This doesn't change the legal problems with your marriage to Walter. The courts will still." "I don't care about the money," Maria interrupted. "I accepted Walter's proposal to save my mother's life. The treatments she's receiving now are her only chance." The hospital's call interrupted their standoff. Walter had regained consciousness briefly and was asking for them both. Nicholas and Maria departed in uncomfortable silence, the journal secure in Maria's bag as tangible proof of their connection. During the drive, Nicholas studied Maria's profile surreptitiously, cataloging similarities he'd overlooked during their confrontation. Beyond their shared eye color lay subtle echoes of Thomas Kingston. The decisive chin, the slight furrow appearing between their brows when concentrating. How had he missed it upon first seeing her? Perhaps because the possibility existed so far outside his understanding of his family. Or perhaps because some truths remain invisible until someone forces us to see. Walter Kingston's hospital room had transformed into a shadowy sanctuary. Monitors blinked silently, tracking vital signs growing steadily weaker. The mighty financier, once Boston's most formidable banking power, now occupied minimal space beneath sterile sheets, his commanding presence reduced to labored breathing and occasional whispers. Nicholas and Maria entered together, their earlier hostility suspended by shared shock. Walter's eyes fluttered open at their approach, recognition followed by visible relief. "You found the journal," he whispered, gaze moving between them. "You know the truth." Nicholas stepped forward, emotions warring across his features. "You let me believe my father was devoted solely to my mother and me. That our family was. Thomas loved you desperately." Walter interrupted with surprising strength. "Enough to sacrifice knowing his daughter to prevent losing his son. While my mother raised me alone," Maria added softly, no accusation in her tone, only sadness for opportunities forever lost. Walter motioned them closer, voice fading. Catherine discovered Thomas's relationship with Lucia during her pregnancy. She threatened to disappear with you, Nicholas, to ensure you would never know your father if he acknowledged Maria. An impossible choice, Nicholas murmured, one that haunted him until his death. Walter's breathing grew more labored. I discovered the truth only afterward, when reviewing his personal accounts. The regular payments to Lucia, the trust he'd established for Maria's education. Maria touched Walter's hand hesitantly. Why the marriage? Why not simply tell us? A ghost of Walter's former shrewd expression crossed his face. The Kingston fortune passes through direct descendants or spouses. Nicholas was provided for, but you remained legally unrecognized. Marriage was the most expedient solution to ensure equal inheritance. You could have adopted her, Nicholas pointed out, or changed your will. Both would face legal challenges from distant relatives. This way was. Walter's voice faded as coughing overtook him. A nurse entered to adjust medications, effectively silencing their conversation. When they were alone again, Walter continued with renewed urgency. I've made many mistakes. Prioritized business over family. Accepted Catherine's manipulation to maintain peace. Lost years I could have known my granddaughter. His gaze fixed on Maria. I couldn't change the past, but I could secure your future. Nicholas paced beside the window, processing revelations that rewrote his understanding of his parents, his childhood, his very identity. My mother prevented this relationship deliberately. She intercepted communication between them. Catherine feared loss above all else, Walter replied. Fear makes people commit unconscionable acts. Did my mother know? Maria asked. About Thomas's marriage? About Nicholas? Walter nodded slowly. Lucia knew everything. She agreed to remain distant to protect Nicholas's relationship with Thomas. A sacrifice few would make. The weight of parental sacrifices. Thomas choosing a present son over an unborn daughter. Lucia accepting absence to preserve another child's bond with his father. Settled upon Nicholas and Maria, connecting them through patterns of love and loss neither had suspected. A commotion in the hallway preceded the arrival of Elliot Hargrove, Walter's attorney, clutching a leather portfolio. You requested my presence urgently? Walter gestured weakly toward Nicholas and Maria. They know everything. Proceed with the amended arrangements. Hargrove produced documents bearing the Kingston family crest. I've brought the updated will, the DNA certification, and the letters to be delivered after. Now, Walter interrupted. Give them everything now. As Hargrove distributed the documents, Walter's monitors began sounding alerts. His breathing grew shallow, eyes struggling to remain focused on the grandchildren he'd brought together at last. Promise me, he whispered, reaching for their hands. Promise you'll remain connected, that my efforts weren't wasted. Before either could respond, medical staff rushed in, ushering them into the hallway as alarms intensified. Nicholas and Maria stood frozen, watching through the glass as doctors attempted resuscitation. The flatline tone penetrated the barrier, marking the exact moment Walter Kingston departed. Leaving his grandchildren united but uncertain, connected by blood, yet separated by decades of secrets. Rain fell during Walter Kingston's funeral, droplets cascading down. Black umbrellas assembled before the family mausoleum. Business associates, politicians, and charity representatives offered condolences to Nicholas with practiced solemnity. Maria stood slightly apart, her presence generating whispered speculation throughout the crowd. The young bride, murmured Boston's elite, casting sidelong glances. Married only 5 days before his death. A former nun, others added, fascination mingling with judgment. How convenient her religious calling ended, just as Walter's health failed. Nicholas observed the gossip mongers with growing irritation. He had maintained professional distance from Maria during funeral preparations, their newfound relationship too fragile for public acknowledgement. Yet each muttered insinuation against her integrity strengthened an unexpected protective instinct. These people had attended his father's funeral too. Had they known then about Lucia and the child Thomas had been forced to abandon? Had some suspected while maintaining polite silence, preserving family reputation above truth? After the service, Maria visited her mother at Boston Memorial. Now recovering in a private suite Walter had arranged before his death. Lucia's improved color and stronger voice testified to the treatment's effectiveness, a benefit of Maria's controversial marriage regardless of what followed. "They're writing articles about you," Lucia said, indicating a newspaper beside her bed, "calling you a gold digger and opportunist." Maria removed her black hat, setting it beside the inflammatory headline. Walter knew this would happen. He understood the public reaction would be harsh. "Will you return to the convent?" Lucia asked gently. The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Maria had requested extended leave, not permanent release from her novitiate. Yet everything had changed in ways she couldn't have anticipated. Mother Superior suggested, "I take time for discernment, given the unusual circumstances." Maria touched the simple gold band Walter had placed on her finger. The publicity has created difficulties for the sisters. Across town, Nicholas directed his driver to Kingston Manor rather than his downtown penthouse. The estate felt different knowing Walter would never again occupy its rooms, never again summon Nicholas for terse financial discussions or rare family dinners. He entered the study where Maria had discovered Walter's journal, finding it exactly as they'd left it, papers still scattered across the Persian rug, safe door ajar. Nicholas gathered the documents methodically, examining each before placing it on the desk. Medical records confirmed Walter's thorough investigation. Genetic markers highlighted across 3 generations, proving beyond doubt Maria's Kingston heritage. Financial transfers documented Thomas's secret support of Lucia until his death, followed by the abrupt termination of funds. Most revealing were letters Thomas had written to his daughter but never sent. Dozens of them, describing his regret, his hope to someday acknowledge her publicly. Nicholas's phone interrupted his discoveries. Catherine Kingston's distinctive ringtone, the mother who had hidden his sister's existence through manipulation and threats. "Nicholas, darling, I've just landed at Logan. This absurd situation with Walter's wife must be addressed immediately. The family attorneys are preparing to contest." Nicholas ended the call without responding, a coldness settling in his chest. His mother had maintained this separation between him and his half-sister for 20 years. Had she expected to continue the deception indefinitely? At the convent, Maria knelt in the familiar chapel, seeking guidance she no longer felt certain would come. Her world had transformed from structured religious routine to bewildering complexity in mere weeks. Sister Angela, her former novice mistress, found her there as evening shadows lengthened. "Your mother's health improves," Sister Angela noted, sitting beside Maria. Walter Kingston's generosity ensured that much. "At what cost?" Maria whispered. "My reputation, possibly my vocation. God's plans often reveal themselves through unexpected channels," Sister Angela replied. "Perhaps this disruption serves a purpose beyond your mother's recovery." Maria thought of Nicholas, the brother she'd never known existed, currently inhabiting a separate reality despite their shared blood. Walter wanted reconciliation between his grandchildren, a healing of old wounds. "Then perhaps your vocation temporarily lies in that direction," Sister Angela suggested. Some callings arrive in unexpected forms. Maria returned to Kingston Manor that evening to collect additional belongings, having taken a modest apartment nearby. The household staff treated her with cool politeness, their loyalty to the Kingston family evident in subtle ways. Delayed responses, minimal assistance, watchful observation of her movements. As she packed books from her temporary quarters, a knock at the door revealed Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had served Walter for decades. "This was delivered for you," she said, extending an envelope bearing the Kingston family crest. "For Mr. Nicholas." The note inside contained just 8 words. "Staff meeting, main hall, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning." Maria arrived precisely at 8, finding household staff assembled before Nicholas, who stood on the grand staircase looking remarkably like Walter in his authoritative stance. Recent events have created confusion regarding Mrs. Kingston's position. Nicholas began formally. Let me clarify. Maria Rosario Kingston remains welcome at this estate at all times. She is to be accorded every courtesy previously extended to my grandfather. Murmurs rippled through the staff until Nicholas raised his hand for silence. Furthermore, he continued, gaze finding Maria at the rear of the gathering. Mrs. Kingston will be relocating to the East Wing permanently, should she choose to accept the invitation. His eyes held hers across the distance, offering truce if not yet acceptance. Family matters require privacy and time. We appreciate your discretion moving forward. The message was clear, public acknowledgement of connection, if not yet its precise nature. A beginning, however tentative, to the relationship Walter had sacrificed everything to restore. The formal dining room of Kingston Manor stretched 30 feet, its mahogany table capable of seating 24 guests comfortably. At opposite ends sat Nicholas and Maria, separated by expanses of polished wood and decades of family secrets. Their first meal together as siblings featured awkward silence, punctuated by requests to pass salt or refill water glasses. You don't need to stay here, Nicholas finally said, breaking the stalemate. The apartment you've taken is probably more comfortable than this mausoleum. Maria set down her fork deliberately. Walter wanted me here, to rebuild what was broken. Walter manipulated us both, Nicholas countered, revealing truths and concealing others until we had no choice but to acknowledge this connection. This connection is called family, Maria replied quietly. However uncomfortable that makes you. Nicholas studied her features. The determined set of her jaw matched his own stubbornness, recognized from countless business negotiations. Their shared genetics manifested in subtle ways beyond physical resemblance. The methodical way they've both arranged their silverware, their identical habit of tilting their head slightly when considering a response. I had investigators research you, Nicholas admitted abruptly, after discovering your marriage to Walter, before knowing who you were. Maria nodded, unsurprised. And exemplary student at St. Catherine's. Volunteer work with hospice patients throughout high school. Early acceptance to Boston College before choosing religious life instead. Not exactly the profile of a fortune hunter. While I know only what Walter told me about you, Maria responded. Investment prodigy. Graduated early from Wharton. Never lost money on a significant trade. A hint of a smile touched Nicholas's lips. Walter's carefully curated version. He omitted my less impressive qualities, such as workaholic tendencies, failed relationships, contentious relationship with him. Nicholas pushed away his barely touched meal. We hadn't spoken properly in months before his diagnosis. Maria absorbed this, connecting it with Walter's journal entries, describing his frustration with Nicholas's emotional distance. He regretted that separation. Silence returned until Nicholas abruptly changed subjects. Your mother's treatment is progressing well? Yes. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. Maria hesitated before adding, she asks about you. Something flickered across Nicholas's expression, surprise followed by uncertainty. She knows about me? About our connection? She's known since I showed her Walter's journal. Maria watched his reaction carefully. She kept a photograph of Thomas hidden in her dresser for years. I found it as a child, but never understood its significance. Nicholas pushed back from the table suddenly, moving to the window overlooking immaculate gardens. My entire childhood feels fabricated. Every story my mother told about my father's devotion to our perfect family, now revealed as carefully constructed fiction. While I grew up believing my father died before knowing me, Maria responded. Different lies, similar pain. Nicholas turned, truly seeing her perhaps for the first time. Not as Walter's young bride or an inconvenient complication, but as someone who shared his sense of betrayal. I have photographs, family albums, if you'd like to see them. The tentative offer formed their first genuine connection. Maria followed Nicholas to the family wing, entering rooms she'd never accessed during her brief employment. The library contained shelves of leather-bound albums chronicling Kingston generations. Nicholas selected several volumes, clearing space on a table. These cover the years before and after your birth. Together, they examined images of Thomas Kingston, the father neither had truly known. Nicholas identified colleagues, properties, family events, each photograph expanding Maria's understanding of her biological heritage. When they discovered a Christmas image showing Thomas holding infant Nicholas while clearly checking his watch, Maria couldn't suppress a smile. "He looks exactly as I do during mandatory family functions," Nicholas admitted, matching her smile briefly before sobering. "I wish I could remember him more clearly." "While I have no memories at all," Maria replied softly. The doorbell interrupted their unexpected moment of connection. Mrs. Henderson appeared with tight-lipped disapproval. "Miss Catherine Kingston has arrived unannounced. She's waiting in the main foyer and appears agitated." Nicholas straightened immediately. "Family albums forgotten. My mother wasn't expected until tomorrow. She's demanding to see you immediately." She also inquired about. Mrs. Henderson's gaze shifted to Maria, the young woman claiming to be Mrs. Kingston. Nicholas and Maria exchanged glances, mutual understanding passing between them. The woman who had maintained their separation for 20 years had arrived to discover her deception exposed. Whatever tentative connection they'd established would now face its first genuine test. "Tell her we'll both be down shortly," Nicholas instructed, surprising Maria with the inclusive phrasing. "And Mrs. Henderson? Prepare the blue guest room. It appears we'll need to accommodate an unexpected visitor." As household staff hurried to comply, Nicholas turned to Maria with unexpected resolve. "Walter's final wish was for us to remain connected despite the obstacles. I believe our first significant obstacle has just arrived." Maria straightened her shoulders, finding unexpected strength in their shared challenge. "Then we should greet her together." Catherine Kingston swept into the manor's grand foyer like a winter storm, elegant, cold, and devastating. At 52, she maintained the sculpted beauty that had captivated Thomas Kingston decades earlier. Her tailored cream suit and flawless blonde coif projected calculated perfection, a fortress of appearance masking the calculation beneath. The society columns had always portrayed Catherine as the devoted widow, raising Nicholas alone after Thomas's tragic accident. Her charitable foundation supported children's causes, her public persona radiating maternal warmth. Only those closest to the family witnessed her iron control over the Kingston legacy and her son. She froze at the sight of Nicholas and Maria descending the staircase together. Her practiced smile faltered, gaze darting between them before settling on her son. "Nicholas, darling, I rushed back from Geneva when I heard about this absurd situation. The idea that Walter would marry some unknown girl days before his death. The scandal is overwhelming. Our family attorneys are preparing." Her voice trailed off as she truly registered Maria's presence, not as Walter's young bride, but as something far more threatening. Recognition dawned slowly, her complexion paling as she noted the distinctive Kingston eyes mirrored in both young faces before her. By morning, Boston's elite buzzed with unprecedented gossip. The Herald's front page featured a split image: Walter Kingston's funeral alongside a photograph of Maria in her former novice habit. From convent to fortune, NUN marries millionaire days before death. Social media exploded with speculation, hashtags trending across platforms. Hashtag Gold Digger Nun. Hashtag Kingston Scandal. Hashtag Terminal Marriage. Nicholas's corporate offices received hundreds of media inquiries. Investment partners demanded explanations. Board members called emergency meetings to discuss potential reputational damage. At the Sisters of Mercy convent, reporters gathered at the gates, shouting questions at anyone entering or leaving. Mother Superior issued a terse statement. Sister Maria Rosario requested temporary leave for family matters. The Archdiocese has no further comment. Maria discovered her private medical records had somehow leaked to tabloids. Details about her mother's treatment protocol appeared in financial blogs questioning the timing of Walter's marriage. Anonymous sources claimed Maria had manipulated a dying man, exploiting his diminished capacity. Boston Memorial increased security around Lucia's room as photographers attempted to access her floor. Doctors reported pressure from unknown parties seeking confidential patient information. Treatment schedules required constant adjustment to avoid media intrusion. Nicholas received a confidential report from Kingston Holdings security team. Catherine had accessed Thomas's sealed records immediately following Walter's death. Financial transfers from numbered accounts coincided with the first media leaks about Maria's background. The coordinated attacks bore his mother's distinctive strategic precision. At Kingston Manor, household staff reported unusual phone calls. Journalists offering payment for insider information, genealogists requesting DNA samples, documentary producers proposing exclusive access. The property's security system recorded multiple intrusion attempts, cameras capturing photographers scaling perimeter walls. Maria maintained composed dignity despite mounting pressure. Her limited public appearances, visiting the hospital, attending necessary legal meetings, drew frenzied media attention. The contrast between her modest demeanor and the sensational accusations heightened public fascination. Online forums debated her motives endlessly, strangers dissecting her character based on fragments of exposed history. Nicholas's financial team detected systematic probing of Kingston Holdings security, attempts to access sealed trust documents, Walter's medical records, Maria's employment file. Digital attacks originated from multiple sources, suggesting coordinated efforts beyond mere journalistic curiosity. Catherine established residence in the manor's guest wing, maintaining public appearances as concerned family matriarch. Her carefully worded statements expressed shock at Walter's hasty decisions during his decline, while emphasizing Nicholas's position as true Kingston heir. She arranged meetings with longtime family attorneys, financial advisors, and public relations consultants without Nicholas's knowledge or consent. The sustained assault forced Nicholas and Maria into an unprecedented alliance. Their shared meals became strategy sessions, comparing notes on Catherine's movements, identifying information sources, tracking media patterns. Their genetic connection remained publicly unacknowledged, but private recognition grew with each shared challenge. When Boston's most prominent society columnist published Catherine's heartfelt concerns about Walter's mental capacity during his final days, Nicholas recognized his mother's signature phrases. The article questioned the validity of Walter's final decisions without directly accusing Maria of manipulation, a masterful balance of innuendo and plausible deniability. That evening, Nicholas placed two items before Maria across the library desk. Walter's final amended will officially naming her as granddaughter, and a press release draft announcing the truth to the world. The Kingston family secret stood poised for public revelation, with consequences neither could fully predict. The Kingston Manor Library had witnessed generations of family decisions, its oak-paneled walls absorbing arguments, celebrations, and confessions since Boston's earliest days. Now it contained three Kingstons locked in silent combat. Catherine positioned defensively near the massive fireplace, Nicholas standing beside the antique globe, and Maria seated calmly in Walter's former chair. Catherine had entered expecting a strategic discussion with her son, finding Maria already present. Occupying Walter's seat, no less, had disrupted her composure. Nicholas had placed the press release before her, without preamble, its headline stark and uncompromising. Kingston family acknowledges long-lost heir. Walter Kingston's final act reunites siblings separated by decades of secrecy. The color drained from Catherine's face as she scanned the document. The calculated precision of Walter's plan became clear. His marriage to Maria serving multiple purposes, ensuring both legal protection and public revelation of truths Catherine had buried for decades. Beyond the library windows, autumn leaves scattered across manicured lawns, mirroring the dissolution of carefully constructed narratives. Facts previously compartmentalized now merged into damning clarity. Catherine's interception of Thomas's communications with Lucia, her threats to disappear with Nicholas if Thomas acknowledged his second child, her systematic erasure of Maria's existence from family records. Nicholas produced evidence of recent financial transactions linking Catherine to the media leaks, the coordinated attacks on Maria's reputation, the attempts to access confidential medical information. Each revelation stripped away another layer of Catherine's carefully maintained facade, exposing the ruthless determination beneath her polished exterior. Maria spoke of finding Thomas's hidden photograph among her mother's possessions, of Lucia's sacrifices to protect Nicholas's relationship with his father, of years spent believing herself fatherless while Thomas sent secret support payments and wrote letters never delivered. The confrontation expanded beyond the immediate family as additional participants arrived. Elliot Hargrove, with Walter's video testimony recorded days before his death, private investigators with surveillance reports documenting Catherine's clandestine meetings with hostile journalists, medical experts confirming Walter's mental competence during his final arrangements. As autumn dusk descended, lights illuminated the library's interior while darkening the windows into mirrors reflecting the family tableau. Catherine caught glimpses of her increasingly isolated position, her son and unacknowledged stepdaughter united against decades of deception, Walter's posthumous revelations dismantling her carefully constructed narrative, irrefutable evidence undermining each attempted denial. Hours passed as accusations crystallized into undeniable patterns. Catherine's justifications evolved from outright denial to claims of maternal protection, insisting she'd only sought to preserve Nicholas's inheritance, position, and relationship with his father. Her voice rose and fell, alternating between defensive hostility and wounded vulnerability as her control visibly crumbled. Nicholas remained unyielding despite Catherine's emotional appeals. The mother who had shaped his understanding of family, who had positioned herself as a victim of circumstances rather than an architect of separation, now stood revealed as the primary enforcer of the division between siblings. His foundation shifted beneath him, past certainties collapsing under the weight of new truths. Maria observed with compassion, transcending her religious training. The woman who had effectively denied her a father, who had orchestrated recent attacks on her character, now appeared smaller than her elegant attire suggested, diminished by exposure of her decades-long campaign to maintain artificial family boundaries. The confrontation concluded not with dramatic resolution, but exhausted détente. Catherine retreated to the guest wing, her influence visibly diminished, but maternal connection to Nicholas ensuring continued presence. The siblings remained in the library, inherited space, becoming neutral territory for their evolving relationship. Outside the manor gates, reporters maintained vigilance, cameras capturing exterior lights, extinguishing one by one as the historic home settled into uneasy silence. Whatever emerged from this night would forever alter the Kingston legacy, publicly and privately. Morning light filtered through century-old oak branches, casting dappled patterns across the small cemetery on Kingston estate grounds. Nicholas and Maria stood before Thomas Kingston's imposing granite marker, fresh flowers disrupting the mathematical precision of the manicured grass. Their first visit together to their father's grave marked a symbolic milestone. 1 month had passed since Catherine's confrontation. 30 days of cautious adjustment, legal revelations, and tentative connection building between siblings who had never imagined each other's existence. The press release had generated predictable media frenzy, quickly overwhelmed by DNA confirmation and Walter's video testimony. Public narrative shifted from scandalous marriage to powerful family reconciliation story. Catherine's strategic retreat to European properties removed immediate conflict, while Kingston Holdings' legal team systematically addressed remaining challenges to Maria's status. Nicholas led Maria through rooms she had never accessed during her brief employment or marriage. the Kingston family archive containing generations of correspondence, photographs, and personal artifacts. Thomas's collection occupied multiple cabinets, yielding unexpected discoveries. College essays displaying humor neither child had associated with their formerly portrayed father, architecture sketches revealing artistic talents never professionally pursued, travel journals documenting destinations beyond his official business itineraries. Maria shared her modest collection of mementos with equal openness. Her childhood drawings preserved by Lucia, academic achievements accomplished despite financial limitations, the journal chronicling her spiritual journey toward religious life. Each exchange expanded their understanding, building bridges across decades of enforced separation. Lucia's improved health enabled carefully planned meetings with Nicholas at neutral locations. Initial awkwardness dissolved as Nicholas recognized his father's expressions in her animated gestures. Lucia's musical laugh, so similar to Maria's, emerged when Nicholas described childhood incidents involving Thomas. The woman who had sacrificed proximity to protect another woman's child now watched that child become a man willing to acknowledge complex truths. Nicholas introduced Maria to his closest friends during a carefully arranged dinner at Kingston Manor. Their initial skepticism, fueled by sensationalized media accounts, transformed as they witnessed the undeniable biological connection between siblings. Maria's intelligence and composure contradicted tabloid portrayals, while Nicholas displayed unprecedented emotional engagement when discussing their evolving relationship. Most significant was their first proper family dinner. Nicholas, Maria, and Lucia seated in Kingston Manor's formal dining room, occupying spaces where generations of Kingstons had dined before them. Mrs. Henderson supervised household staff with fierce attention to detail, her initial coldness toward Maria replaced by protective propriety following Catherine's exposed manipulations. The evening represented conscious reconstruction. Three individuals connected by blood and separated by circumstance, creating new traditions while acknowledging painful history. They avoided Catherine's preferred seating arrangement, selected menu items reflecting Lucia's cultural heritage alongside Kingston family standards, and used Walter's favorite wines to honor his role in their reunion. As dinner concluded, Nicholas discovered himself genuinely laughing at Maria's understated observations about adapting to wealth. Lucia shared previously untold stories about Thomas's awkward attempts to cook for her during their relationship. Maria described her struggle to explain Kingston family dynamics to her former religious sisters. Nicholas observed these women, his biological half-sister and the woman who might have been his stepmother under different circumstances, with growing appreciation for what his life had lacked. Their resilience despite limited resources contrasted with his material advantages but emotional isolation. Their capacity for forgiveness despite legitimate grievances challenged his tendency toward sustained resentment. When Lucia excused herself early, citing needed rest, Nicholas and Maria continued their conversation into evening hours. Seated before the library fireplace, they discovered shared literary preferences, similar analytical approaches to problems, and identical discomfort with public scrutiny. Their conversation flowed more naturally than either had anticipated, genetic connection manifesting in compatible thought patterns despite different life experiences. Late night found them examining childhood photographs, identifying inherited traits across generations, and speculating about which personality characteristics might similarly transcend nurture. The tentative foundation of siblinghood strengthened with each discovered commonality and acknowledged difference. Exactly as Walter had hoped during his final days, Nicholas stared at the formal offer letter bearing Rothschild International's embossed letterhead. The position represented everything had pursued throughout, and strategic positioning for eventual chairmanship. The role required immediate relocation to London, extensive Asian travel, and minimum 3-year commitment. 6 months earlier, he would have accepted without hesitation. Now he glanced through his office window at Kingston Manor's extensive grounds, where Maria walked with Lucia along garden paths Walter had designed decades earlier. Their daily ritual, mother and daughter discussing Lucia's improving health while enjoying moderate exercise, had become part of the property's natural rhythm. The manor itself had transformed under Maria's thoughtful influence. Her background in service-oriented religious life manifested in subtle improvements for household staff, adjusted schedules accommodating family needs, updated living quarters, educational benefits for members pursuing advancement. These changes were implemented with respectful consultation rather than authoritative mandate. Nicholas's corporate colleagues noted his evolving management style, increased attentiveness to employee circumstances, decreased emphasis on performance metrics alone, growing integration of ethical considerations alongside profit objectives. Traits previously dormant now emerged through consistent interaction with his half-sister's perspective. Across town, Maria knelt in Sisters of Mercy Chapel, familiar peace enveloping her during private prayer hours Mother Superior still permitted despite her extended absence. The convent's structured simplicity contrasted sharply with Kingston Manor's grandeur, yet both environments now constituted aspects of her identity. Mother Superior had delivered Vatican correspondence regarding Maria's unusual circumstances, outlining options for her religious future. Return to novitiate with additional discernment period, transition to secular religious order with modified vows, or formal release from preliminary commitments. Each pathway offered different relationships with the church she loved and the family she had discovered. Maria's religious formation had emphasized clear dichotomies: secular versus sacred, material versus spiritual, worldly attachment versus divine devotion. Yet her experiences since leaving the convent revealed complexity beyond such categorization. Walter's final act, utilizing material wealth for family reconciliation, demonstrated how resources could serve deeper purposes than mere accumulation. Nicholas's integration of her into Kingston Holdings' charitable foundation revealed similar complexity. Her religious training provided valuable perspective on effective assistance programs, while Kingston Resources magnified implementation capabilities beyond anything her former order could achieve. Their collaborative approach generated innovative projects addressing systemic poverty while honoring individual dignity. Lucia's health stabilized through treatments financing alone could never have secured. Medical partnerships established through Kingston Connections provided access to emerging protocols, while Maria's healthcare background enabled informed advocacy during treatment decisions. Their mother now discussed future possibilities rather than imminent limitations. The siblings had established an unspoken routine during evening hours, sharing library space while pursuing individual activities, Maria reading historical texts while Nicholas reviewed financial reports, comfortable silence punctuated by occasional observations. These quiet moments contrasted with their public roles, managing intensified scrutiny following family revelations. Nicholas placed Rothschild's offer aside, attention drawn to Walter's portrait above the fireplace. His grandfather's final manipulation, emotional blackmail through deathbed requests, had nonetheless achieved something money alone could never purchase. The fractured family had begun healing through uncomfortable truths rather than comfortable fabrications. Maria closed her prayer book, touching the simple wooden cross she still wore beneath fashionable clothing Lucia insisted befitted her position. Her spiritual director had suggested God sometimes answered prayers through unexpected channels. Perhaps her religious calling remained valid, but manifested differently than originally anticipated. The siblings' paths converged at family dinner that evening, each carrying undisclosed decisions requiring courage to implement and faith to sustain. Their choices would determine whether Walter's final wish, genuine family connection transcending past division, would endure beyond initial reconciliation. Spring sunshine bathed Kingston Manor's limestone facade as workers positioned the final bronze plaque beside the newly constructed East Wing entrance. Kingston Family Medical Research Center gleamed above smaller text acknowledging Walter's founding vision and Thomas's inspirational legacy. Nicholas adjusted the alignment personally, ensuring perfect symmetry with architectural elements his father had designed decades earlier. 1 year had transformed the property significantly. The imposing gates previously deterring visitors now opened regularly for medical professionals, research teams, and patient family members accessing specialized treatment protocols. Security remained vigilant, but less forbidding, balancing privacy protection with accessibility for legitimate purposes. The small cottage near the rose gardens housed Lucia comfortably. Her health stabilized through experimental treatments now offered to others facing similar diagnoses. Her nursing background proved valuable during center development. Her perspective ensuring patient experience remained central despite technological complexities. She divided time between administrative contributions and personal rejuvenation, strength returning gradually through carefully balanced activity. Maria emerged from the main entrance wearing conservative business attire that complemented her natural dignity while acknowledging her evolving identity. The Vatican had approved her unique arrangement. Formal release from religious vows while maintaining spiritual affiliation through newly established charitable foundation. Her theological training merged with Kingston resources created powerful implementation capacity for service-oriented initiatives. The media narrative had evolved from scandal to redemption story as consistent evidence confirmed Walter's claims and Catherine's manipulations. Nicholas's public acknowledgement of Maria as his sister, combined with their unified approach to family business interests, gradually replaced sensationalized coverage with respectful distance. Catherine remained in European exile by choice rather than necessity. Occasional communication suggesting potential reconciliation remained possible, if not imminent. Nicholas's decision to decline Rothschild's offer generated business community speculation until Kingston Holdings' restructured leadership model demonstrated unexpected benefits. The siblings' complementary strengths, Nicholas's financial acumen balanced by Maria's ethical framework, created distinctive corporate culture attracting both investment partners and emerging talent. Quarterly performance exceeded projections, while community impact metrics established new industry standards. The Manor interior reflected their collaborative influence through thoughtful integration rather than dramatic reinvention. Family portraits previously limited to formal poses now included candid moments capturing genuine connection. Historical artifacts shared space with contemporary additions reflecting diverse perspectives. The institutional atmosphere yielded to genuine habitation while respecting traditions worth preserving. Personal transformations proved more significant than physical changes. Nicholas developed patience previously foreign to his results-oriented approach, recognizing relationship building required different metrics than financial transactions. His emotional vocabulary expanded through consistent interaction with Maria's more expressive communication style. Professional associates noted increased empathy alongside unchanged analytical precision. Maria adapted to privilege with careful discernment, distinguishing between meaningful opportunities and hollow consumption. Her religious formation provided ballast against materialistic currents, while allowing appropriate enjoyment of legitimate comforts. The simplicity she valued translated into thoughtful resource allocation rather than artificial austerity. Former religious colleagues recognized her continued spiritual authenticity despite changed external circumstances. Together, they visited Walter's grave monthly, acknowledging his complicated legacy with growing appreciation for his final act despite lifetime limitations. His manipulation had indeed forced their connection, yet genuine relationship developed through their chosen continuation rather than obligatory compliance. They honored his intention while creating bonds exceeding his orchestration. Their weekly visits to Thomas's memorial evolved from obligation to meaningful ritual. Initial awkwardness yielded to comfortable reminiscence as Lucia shared previously withheld memories, helping both children develop fuller understanding of their father beyond Catherine's controlled narrative. These conversations healing wounds inflicted by decades of separation and silence. As dedication ceremony guests assembled on the manor grounds, Nicholas and Maria exchanged knowing glances across the gathering. Their improbable journey from strangers to siblings, from adversaries to allies, demonstrated how endings often contain beginnings, and how Providence worked through unexpected channels to accomplish purposes exceeding human design. Walter's final journal entry, framed in the research center's main corridor, captured this truth with surprising clarity from a man known more for financial calculation than philosophical insight. Family transcends legal definitions and biological accidents. True legacy exists not in assets transferred, but connections restored. May those I failed forgive my methods while embracing my final purpose, healing what should never have been broken.